Okay, we're going to represent vectors as arrows. Sets of three numbers, commonly thought of as x, y, and z. Represent them with arrows and discuss displacements and so forth. So I've already logged in, started a new trinket. I gave it a name, vector arrows 1. So the first is we're going to set up 3 positions and mark those 3 positions, and then to draw arrows that represent the vector displacements that take you from one position to another position. So I'm just going to define vectors for 3 positions. Pause red equals, we have to specify it's a vector, VEC, and then the 3 numbers for the components. I'm just going to say 1, minus 2, 0. I'm just going to restrict myself to 2 dimensions today. And these colors will be the colors of little balls that I'll put to mark. Pause green equals vec 250, and blue. Position blue, pause blue, equals vector with the components minus 3, 3, 0. Okay, so you can go ahead and do that. Now, next we will set up little balls that will mark the positions. Remember, the hashtag is a comment. This will not be executed. So, for instance, the first ball at the red position, I'll call it ball red so we can keep track of the names if we want to do anything with them, equals, see if you can remember or look up, how do I make a little ball a sphere? Okay, the object name is sphere. And I need to specify its position, so I want this at pause red. Pause a second. See if you remember. Look it up. Name of the position is POS. And we want it equal to POS underscore red. That's the name we gave to the vector that we will use for the position of the red ball. Color. We'll use color.red. And the convenient size, I will pick radius as 0.2. You can play with that, see what looks good to you. Okay, so this is a good time for you to pause the video and in your own trinket, create balls to mark the green position and the blue position. Okay, so your code might look something like this. Create the green ball on line 9, the blue ball on line 10. Saved often. Run it, and I should have 3 spheres. And there they are, they look about right. The red is over a little to the right and down some. The green is over to the right and up a lot. And the blue is to the left and up. Okay, so it looks qualitatively about right. So the next is to use the vector math available in GlowScript and VPython to calculate the displacements. In other words, what would you do to get from one ball to the next ball? The basic idea is displacement is a new position minus an old position. In other words, it takes you from old to new. We'll calculate those, and then we'll draw arrows to represent them. Okay, so the first one, we want to go from red to green. So I'm just going to give it my own name, disp for displacement. underscore RG for red to green equals, and the nice thing about VPython is when you want to subtract vectors, you just do it. You just type in the names of the vectors. So we want the new position. We're going from red to green. So we want the position of green minus the position of red. Okay. So you see if you can figure out the next two for green to blue and blue to red. So what will displacement green to blue look like? What will displacement from blue back to red look like? So pause the video, see if you can fill these in. Okay, so the displacement, it takes me from green to blue. The new one is blue. Subtract the starting point, which was green, pause blue minus pause green. And the displacement from blue to red, we want to go from blue to red, so red minus blue, new minus old. It's probably a good idea to print these out now to see if, to confirm the vector arithmetic is okay. So we can print, put in quotations, this is red to green, that will be a text that's printed out, and a comma, and I want to print out that actual vector, disp RG. Now if I run it, in addition to displaying, it will show what it thinks is the vector. So 170, does that sound right? Well, if I look at the vectors up here, 1 plus 1, it does take you to 2, minus 2 plus 7 takes you to 5, 0 plus 0 takes you to 0, so this seems to be okay. Okay, so why don't you type the lines to print out the other two and check them out. Okay, so I've done that, and looking at the math quick, everything appears to be okay. So those vectors that I've printed out, those are the actual displacement vectors. Without units, I have not put in units on any of this. But that is one representation of a vector as giving its three components. Another way is to represent it as an arrow with a direction and a size. And GoScript VPython gives you a way of doing that by letting you draw arrows. So let's say I want to draw an arrow to represent the displacement from red to green. I'm going to call it vec underscore RG. This arrow is going to represent a vector equals the object, not surprisingly, is arrow. And you need to specify various things. For purposes of representing the vector, the key thing is the property called the axis. The axis is basically specifying the vector that the arrow is representing. So if I said axis equals disp underscore RG, this will make an arrow that is representing the red to green displacement. Okay, well it did that. It's not quite showing you the displacement you might think, because you want it to go from red to green, but other than that, it looks like the right direction and the right size. It's a bit wide, but in fact, it is representing the right vector. So there's two things we can do to make it look better. One is we can make it not quite as wide. And the property for that is shaft width. And I've just found 0.2 to work okay for this. So now it's a little skinnier. So it's got the right direction, it's got the right size, but we want it to actually look like it's going from red to green. So a third aspect of an arrow, which is the one that lets you move it around on the screen and lets us put the tail of the arrow at the starting point at the red ball, that property is the position of the arrow. POS equals, so we want the tail to be at the position of the red ball. Pause red. And now it looks proper. It actually points from red to green. One last property, we can give it a color. And red and green combine to make yellow. I'm going to do one thing that you're allowed to do. I'm going to break this line up a little. So I'm going to put the cursor at this point after the shaft width equals 0.2 comma. I can hit the enter key and do a couple tabs. It breaks the line up, but VPython knows that this all belongs in the same line. I'm doing this so the line doesn't get too long to see. You're allowed to do that if you want to. And so there we go. The yellow arrow shows us the displacement vector, represents the displacement vector going from red to green. Okay, so see if you can set up a cyan that goes from green to blue, and a magenta that goes from blue to red. Here's a cyan one that starts at green. The position is the green ball position. Its axis, it's representing the displacement from green to blue, and I made it cyan. Next one next. And there it is. The axis represents the vector that goes from blue to red. It is actually located, the tail is located at the blue, the starting point. So those are the two most important properties of when you're drawing a vector in VPython. The position where the tail is, in a sense the starting point if you're doing a displacement, and the axis, which represents the vector itself, in this case the displacement. In this case, how do you go from point A to point B? Okay, there's a couple other properties of vectors, and those will be on the next video.